Hi, I'm Jim,
And I'm Kevin,
and we are.
the Signal Brothers. Hey, everybody, welcome back to another podcast. We love doing this and we love having people on the podcast. We really love to have you on here. So if you're interested on coming on the podcast and want to talk to us about something that you're passionate about, please reach out to Jim and I and let us know. We're interested in having you on, and we're not looking for people to agree with us. We, as Jim always says, the best opinion, Jim, is what?
The one that's different from mine.
There you go. So anyhow, listen, we'd love to have you on. If you're interested in coming on the podcast, please reach out to Jim or I. Let us know. Reach out to us on our Facebook page. We'll be happy to have you on. What we'll do is we'll talk to you in advance, find out what you're passionate about, get everything lined up, and we'd love to have you on there.
Yeah.
Now, another thing is we love to take questions. So if you got questions, please go ahead, put them in the chat. Let us know what you're thinking. We'd like it to be about the subject, right? If you're going to post questions about other subjects, we're probably not prepared to speak to those questions because we prepare for these podcasts each night. So do us a favor and make sure the questions that you have are related to the podcast. So, Jim, let's get into our subject tonight. Go ahead. Why don't you get us started?
Oh yeah. So one of our president's favorite tools right now, and has been since he stepped into office, has been his tariffs. And he's using those to get everything. And it's my opinion, it's just a means to an end. He really don't want to do a tariff, but he has no problem threatening it and even going through the motions. And so far, in a lot of cases, it has proved fruitful. He's gotten what he's wanted without having to actually impose at least them all. So,
Yeah, these are. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
A lot of it's gone back to his immigration policy. Threatening tariffs and repealing tariffs to, get the countries to accept, the folks we're shipping out back to their countries. So it's working, but it's a lot. It's a lot. He's doing it a lot. So we'll see how it plays out and get some discussion about it going on and see how we agree or disagree on it.
Well, yeah, it is an interesting subject, Jim. And the crazy thing about these tariffs is that there are people that are in favor of it. They think it's the greatest thing, and he should do more. And then there's a lot of people out there also that are saying, "Hey, what the heck are we doing?" Right? So I think it's going to be a great conversation this evening about this and what we think is going on. And yeah, I did a little research about tariffs, right? And according to some of the research I did, the tariffs are not really burdened initially by the country that he's applying them on. Those tariffs, right? So the tariffs happen, and then when whoever's buying those goods picks them up at the port, they're paying that tariff. So what they're doing is they're going back to their seller, the buyer, excuse me, the seller. They're going back to the seller and they're saying, "Hey, we got this tariff. I need you to discount the price because I don't want to raise the prices on the folks that I'm serving." And so they go ahead. In cases, some of the research I did in China, they're lowering the price. They're cutting into their profit margins so that the buyer doesn't have to raise the prices. So I think from that perspective, that is a great impact, and that's probably one of the positive impacts. What's your take on that?
Well, that's very true because, the markups, we always talk about the profit margin, the markups, these places, whether they're locally or overseas, to create their profit margins. Now, if that profit margin is threatened by them not accepting the tariffs and buying the products, they got to do something to keep them buying their products. So there you go. You can get lower prices. Now, how long they're willing to do that, that's a whole other question. And then you've got places like, say, Canada, who you may have already seen this. They pulled American liquor off their shelves. I was like, this is stuff they've already paid for, so is that a detriment to us? They've already paid for it. So no effect there. Is it a detriment to their people that want that product? Probably, but I'm sure they'll find something else. But yeah, I mean, it can work. The big thing is the short-term effects versus the long-term effects. Short-term, we're having some positive here and there, some positive effects on it, but long-term effects, I don't know how much longer, people want to keep their profit margin, lower than they like it to be. So it may play out, it may pan out, it may be a strategy that once he sees it played out and he can't get any more out of it, he puts it aside and goes to another strategy. We just don't know yet.
But since you should bring up about the alcohol, because I did pull up an article. It's a CNBC article, but I mean, nonetheless, there's a small Vermont business who's already feeling the effects. They had sent a shipment off to the Society of Alcohol for Quebec, and they're responsible in Quebec for the trade of alcohol beverages in the province. And basically, it's been sitting at the dock and for a month, because they said, guess what? All of a sudden, I'm not interested in your product. So you're absolutely right there that there are some negative effects. And I went and looked up and I said, hey, so what do the polls say about tariffs? And I went to the Brookings Institute, and it says, this is amazing. It says, March 12th found that 61% of Americans and 78% of young adults disapprove of the way he's handling the tariffs.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. Very interesting. So, a lot of his base is the base that got him in office is not happy with how he's handling the tariffs. So my question is he paying attention to that?
Well, I mean, in all honesty, you get to figure that's got to be tainted. And I feel pretty confident in saying this. That's got to be tainted by the fact that most people aren't going to like him no matter what he does. So any poll that they take is going to be tainted immediately by that particular fact. I mean, that exact fact. But I mean, I can see where they don't approve, and I can see that your example that you gave about that product just sitting there on the dock. I mean, absolutely. Nothing you do is going to have 100% positive effects. You're going to have to take the bad with the good. That goes back to what I said about long-term versus short-term, because it's easy to get to short-term effect. I mean, you're happy now, but down the road, we might have a problem. Where, as opposed to, it's rough now, we've got higher prices, it's tough. But then at the end of the year, we got a better fiscal year all around, and prices start coming down, people are living better. It's half, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Which would you rather have it? As far as that poll, I would be interested to see exactly how many of those actually voted for him or voted at all, versus how many are actually just answering the poll just because it's another reason to hate on Trump. Because at the end of the day, most of his negative feedback is going to be from people just giving him negative feedback. I mean, whether you're for him or against him, it doesn't. For him or against him, what matters is people aren't going to like him no matter what he does, no matter how good it turns out. And that's going to taint just about any poll that we take, where he's involved. Oh, hey.
Yeah. Oh, we got a question?
Mm-hmm.
Comment.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Okay. They are, but we're going to take a broad perspective, Ed. We're not just going to look at one side. And
Yeah. I always try to.
Yeah.
I always try to read something from both sides. And I read something when I was doing a little bit of research today on this, and it's just some of what I read was just so, like I was going to a moment ago, so hard against everything he does. And I'm just like, wow, give me some facts, give me some data. Don't just start screaming at the man. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that, I mean, that, if you don't like them, that's fine, but let's proof is in the pudding.
So what's interesting about it is even though I'm reading this report, even though it's left leaning, Ed, the one thing it does say, it says 54% of the respondents think that it's Americans and companies who are going to pay the tariff and not the countries, right, that we're applying them on. And 68% believe that it's going to increase prices. So I think there's some found logic in it, even though we may not, Ed, you may not like the organization that I use as a reference, but I think there's some pretty sound logic in that and why people are not happy with the tariffs, right? And when I say the people, I'm not saying all people. I'm just talking about from this specific poll I pulled up. But thanks for that, Ed. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I can certainly understand the concern about consumer prices going up. You and I paying the difference in the increase in there. I can see that causing prices to go up. But again, short-term effect versus long-term effect. We willing to pay a few cents more and be better down the road? I mean, I'm willing to give it a shot, but again, we're already dealing with high prices. We don't want it to go up too much.
Yeah. And it was amazing. I was reading a report that a majority of the farms get, and I'm trying to find that research I read. It said the majority of the farms, they get some kind of fertilizer from Canada, right? To fertilize and most of that comes from Canada. And there is now a tariff on that, which means Canada's now imposed a tariff on the U.S. on that. And now, question is, are the farmers going to pay an additional amount to fertilize their crops this year? It's a great question.
Mm-hmm. Well, he's using it for all kind of things. Like what was that? The Colombia. He was imposing tariffs on Colombia because they wouldn't let the plane land full of migrants he was sending back, and then they wouldn't let it land. He threatened tariffs, and all of a sudden they came to an agreement, and they're landing. It's like, okay, well, that one's a really quick example of how that can work. Colombia, I mean, what, coffee, cocaine? I mean, what are we gonna, I don't like coffee anyway, and I don't do cocaine, so it doesn't have an immediate effect on me. But I mean, if it did, if it was enacted, Colombia is not a very big country. I think that would hurt them, which is why they gave in so quick.
I believe it. So I did pull up a Fortune article about the 5 facts about tariffs. Mm-hmm. And so depending on which article you look at, Fortune could be seen as left-leaning or right-leaning or right center. But it says fact number 1, tariffs are a tax that will be mainly, if not wholly, borne by U.S. consumers. Found that pretty interesting. Fact 2, tariffs don't accelerate growth in output and employment. They throttle both. Fact number 3 is big tariffs will not reduce the Trump hated trade deficit. It's not, right? It's not going to reduce the trade deficit. And then fact 4, tariffs will do little, if anything, to shrink the federal budget deficit. And fact 5, we're not getting fleeced by convincing our partners, right, that this is good for them, right? So those are the 5 facts I found on there. They do seem a little anti-Trump to me, especially that one that I read. But I find it quite interesting that I haven't. The only positive thing I have found about the tariffs are 2 articles. I found one about the Wolf of Wall Street. He is for the tariffs and doesn't believe that the criticism is warranted. And obviously on the whitehouse.gov did I find some positive things about the tariffs and what they're going to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, when you talk about the tariffs, there's something else you got to realize, and we had talked about this before, is if you were to look to see the existing tariffs from other countries around the world, we are actually one of the lowest. and imposing tariffs. Ours are toward the bottom. I mean, we're not even in the top 10. So it's
No, that's exactly correct. We leverage normally on importing products. I think it was 6%, when sometimes lower, as low as 2%.
Yeah,
Is
I was
what
going
I
to say
in
what
the
I saw was,
research I did. Right.
yeah,
So
that was,
the tariffs we normally apply to the products that are imported are relatively low compared to what American goods are, the tariffs that are put on American goods standard across the globe.
oh yeah, I've seen tariffs as high as 27% in the research. I mean, it's ridiculous from smaller countries like, say, Belize or I couldn't remember the other one I was just thinking about, but one of them was, one I saw was Belize. It's like 27.6. I mean, there's just all kind of crazy numbers out there, and we're like averaging 3 to 6%. I mean, it's, so it's not as big a deal. The other thing you got to remember is when we're bearing, if you're talking about the consumers bearing the brunt of those tariffs, I mean, we probably have a larger, I dare to say, a larger welfare state than we ever had before. So those people don't care. The government's paying every bit of their existence. It's not going to affect them. It's going to affect, the middle class, just like everything else does. The people that actually have to go to work, and again, I know there's people that are justifiably can't work, but that's not the bulk of them. And that's why they have the freedom to, talk about a lot of the things that they talk about, is because it doesn't affect them. Like it would affect you and me. I mean, we were talking a couple weeks ago about that supposed $5,000 that was going to get sent out to each person. They were talking about that, and it's like, 5,000 wouldn't really change my life. It would get some bills paid, but if I got $5,000, say 25, 30 years ago, it would be life altering. That's the
we talked about, we talked about that last week, how for some
Yeah.
people that money would be huge. Yeah, absolutely.
So we're going to, the folks that are, the great number of folks that are on federal assistance or even state assistance, they're not really going to feel that hit the way, working middle class would feel it, and of course the upper class, they got more money and they know what to do with. So it ain't going to affect them either. But again, middle class is going to get the brunt of it. But I think it's a short-term thing.
Yeah, it's interesting. I pulled up an article from Saturday about Kia America is, before the tariffs, they were already planning to move some production stateside. But the reality is did they do it because he got elected? They were making those plans, but that's good. I mean, I think you have to be selective about the tariffs you're going to apply, and I think there are some positive aspects on applying tariffs, increased tariffs to some of the items out there, because definitely it's having an impact on the Chinese economy.
Yeah,
because the Chinese retailers, right, they want to continue to have the same partners buying their goods, right? And so if the buyers in the U.S. start going other places to buy those products, it's definitely going to further negatively impact the Chinese economy, which I'm okay with. Right, I'm completely okay with.
Yeah, I mean, that's he imposed a 10% on China, along with the 10% on Canadian energy. I wonder if that number on the 10% on Canadian energy is talking about the fertilizer, including the fertilizer as well.
That's a great question. That's a great question.
But yeah, I mean, it's gonna. Yeah, there's a lot, and what's it gonna do? As far as inflation goes, because I know during the last administration, those we hit record inflation, and then toward the end of it started coming down. And then he's getting all these tariffs going, and people are, because see, the market doesn't, and I have this argument with a lot of people, the market doesn't necessarily react to reality. It reacts to anticipation of reality. What it thinks is going to happen. It may not happen, but if it thinks something's going to happen, it's going to react. That could very well happen as well now, because if it thinks, the consumer prices are going to go up because of the tariffs, inflation could reflect that. And again, I could be totally wrong. It remains to be seen. But the market's a funny thing. I mean, even when a president's elected, or anything major like that happens, you see a disturbance in the force, if you will. They don't know it's going to be good or bad, but you definitely see it.
Well, we see it in the stock market right now, right?
Yeah, it
Stock
dropped.
market's been a little volatile. Obviously, the question of whether they were going to pass the budget or not had some impacts, right? That was kind of hanging in the wind. But definitely, the implementation of tariffs have taken us have impacted the stock market, right? The stock market has gone down. There have been some pretty significant losses on the stock market, and will they recover? Well, time will tell.
Yeah, the S&P, what was it, 1.7% overall, something like that?
Yeah.
It was, So, and I mean, the stock market is a fickle thing. It just, I mean, you look at it wrong, it could drop a point. So, who's to say? Who's to say? But I mean, it's definitely. I read a place, the Wall Street Journal is calling this the dumbest trade war in history. That's their words. That's not me. I mean, that's what the Wall Street Journal. It's and they're generally considered a conservative publication, and they said it's the dumbest trade war in history. I'm just throwing that out there. I got no opinion on it. I just found it funny.
Well, I think it's early to tell, right? Mm-hmm. What the real impacts are, right? Obviously, we're seeing some reactions in the market. We're seeing large companies wary of these tariffs, right? Mm-hmm. So the question is, I think when we get a little farther away from the implementation of these tariffs, we're going to know the impacts it had. We start seeing large layoffs, and I'm not talking about the government reduction of government people. I'm talking about in the private industry. We start seeing large layoffs in the steel industry, in other industries related to these tariffs. Then one would have to say that the tariffs are not doing what he intended. Would you not agree?
Again, the short term, letting the planes land, those are working. Long term, it could go either way at this point. It could go either way. Because I mean, when you think about it, I mean, if we got these tariffs on Canada and stuff, they supply what? Talking about the automotive industry, which is a huge thing for us, 13%. In Mexico, 42%. I mean, that's huge. I mean, that's literally more than half of our parts right there for the auto industry. And I mean, that's what did it say, like an $800 billion business or something like that? Or $809 billion to the U.S. economy in 2023. And we're putting tariffs on countries that are supplying us with more than 50% of the materials that we need. And then you want to go further and talk about your electric cars that the Biden administration was pushing so hard. What about the countries that supply all of our cobalt and lithium and all that stuff? Because we don't have it here, at least not in the quantities that we need. I mean, it's got some far-reaching implications.
It does, and that's why I think Tesla is actually concerned about it, right? Because Tesla is concerned about that and the impacts it has. But let's talk about specifically the tariffs to Canada and Mexico, right? Whole purpose behind those tariffs is to stem the illegal immigration and also the fentanyl flowing across the border. So my question is, Jim, do you really think that these tariffs are going to help stem the tide of those things flowing across our border?
The migrants, maybe. The fentanyl, I don't think so. Because I mean, you think about it. How did they get it across? You've heard about the drug mules. They get 10 women. They promise them this and that in the world, and they load them up with drugs. And they don't care if one or two of them get caught. It's good business. 8 or 9 of them got through. I don't see that changing. I mean, it works for them. I don't see how that can change. I mean, you might have a smaller amount of people coming through. They're just going to use them. I mean, they're going to use whatever they have. I don't see the drug flow stopping. And I mean, I don't want to get too deep into it, but you got the whole argument of the drug industry, the drug trade subsidizing the U.S. economy. Are we going to let it? interrupt it?
Yeah, it's good. That's a good question. When I look at trying to stem the flow of drugs and illegal immigrants across the borders, just Kevin's perspective, obviously I'm not the president of the United States. I didn't get elected, but I would do it a little bit differently, right? I would at least try to engage in dialogue. I'd have the Secretary of State out there in dialogue with both Canada and Mexico, saying, "Hey, what can we do? What can we do? How can we partner to reduce the flow?" Right now, if those talks fell through, then maybe the way to go is to implement tariffs if we're not getting the results or the partnership we're truly looking for. That's just my perspective on it. All right, I think we come out swinging with tariffs because we're not happy about the flow of things coming across the border. Well, why aren't we talking? Right? That's what rational, at least from my perspective, I think rational people, that's what they should be doing is let's have an adult conversation. That's why you and I stood up this podcast, right? To have adult conversations about things that are uncomfortable. So I think that is a better way to go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he may be, and again, like you're saying, I'm just guessing. It may be that he figured out, well, we're past that point. Your analogy with the scalpel versus the sledgehammer. We're past that point. And again, that's just him. Like you, I have no idea. That's not something I could figure out at this point. But he might figure we're just past that point, and that's what we need to do. But I mean, the fact that several years ago, I was in Cabo, my first time to Mexico. This was nearly 20 years ago. And the thing that left a mark on me was when we went to these resorts, there was 3 flags flying at these resorts. You know what those 3 flags were? U.S., Canada, Mexico. And I'm like, that kind of says something. I mean, we're our closest neighbors. We're our closest neighbors. You think we should get along to the point where we don't have these kind of things. But who's taking the blame on that? Mexico really don't seem to care that all their people are just flowing across the border unchecked. They don't seem to care until they got called out on it. Well, at some point we've got to have an equal, accountability here. What you're saying is correct. We should be able to sit down. We should be able to have, a dialogue set up. We should be able to work through this to a point where everybody's reasonably happy. But if you got that one guy sitting in your group that don't want to do nothing, what can you do? I mean, you no matter what you do, you're not going to motivate him until you slap him down where it hurts. War's not going to hurt him. Hitting their pocketbook is what's going to hurt them. That's going to get their attention. And that's what I think he's doing.
One of the things that I think about is, our buddy Elon Musk with Doge is, saving us all this money. And my question is, why don't we divert some of this money to, I know we're talking about cutting agencies down, but if there's one agency that can probably help us stem the flow of fentanyl across the border, would be the Drug Enforcement Agency, right? Can we come up with new techniques to discover and detect the drugs as they flow? I don't know. I'm not an expert on drug detection, and I wouldn't claim to be. But it seems like to me like fentanyl's serious. There's other drugs that are more serious than fentanyl that are starting to flow across the border. I forget the name. I was reading about it about a month ago. And it seems like to me our detection techniques to detect this stuff have to change. Right? In a world we are today, I would think they're using artificial intelligence, using other high-speed technologies. We should be able to detect these things coming across the border. And I know that the drug cartels are getting smart. They're outsmarting, and every time we do something, they implement something. And this is why I think we just got to get outside the box on our the way we detect. The way drugs are detected. And again, I'm not an expert on it, but I would think coming from the cyber field, and I watched the cat and mouse game with cyber, I would think that we could absolutely do something to be more effective in the ability to combat the flow of drugs across the border.
Yeah, I mean, like like my example a little bit ago, if you got 10 people, 10 mules coming across and 80% makes it, that's not much of a dent we've made. That's the way we're operating. We catch 1 or 2 out of 10. That's not anywhere near good enough. And I mean, like you said, we got the science, we got we got drug sniffing dogs, we got all kind of stuff you can come up with. I'm not sure how AI would help in this effort, but I mean, yeah, there's got to be some sort of other way to go about doing this.
Yeah, technology can, for sensing at the borders, right? Because personnel can't cover 100% of the border. And again, I'm not the smart guy on this, Jim, right? Mm-hmm. There's got to be a way to do detection, and when people come across, right, we have these whole body scanners that scan you when you go to the airport, right? Now you don't just walk through a metal detector. You stand there with your hands over your head, and it does this whole virtual scan of you. I don't know why we can't take that technology to improve the way we're detecting the way people are carrying things across the border.
There's a humanity to it as well, though, because these people are shoving them in, let's just say, body cavities.
Understood.
And at what point are you gonna violate somebody? I mean, I want to stop it, but I don't want to do that.
Yep.
And they know that.
Yeah.
Hey, we got another question. Are tariffs as good as they are harmful? Hey, how would he drag that over here? Hey, there we go. Tariffs as good as they are harmful, meaning is there an opportunity if we take it, or a downfall if we don't take advantage of made in America? Yeah, that's good.
Hey, Chris, it's a great comment. Mm-hmm. They can be. That's what we've been saying. Is there's lots of, we see some positive effects, we see some negative effects, but we, Jim and I, at least, I know I can speak for myself. We're all about made in America, right? But let's just be honest. The tariffs are not going to make force everything to be made in America. We're still going to outsource stuff. So, but I definitely am about the made in America. The factories producing things here. I think the chips, we need to stop getting those from China. We need to build them here in the U.S. Mm-hmm. And that is some of that's high tech. I think a lot of that's high tech, right? And needs people with good backgrounds. And boy, we always come full circle, Jim, don't we, in these conversations about the Department of Education and gearing our schools, right, to be able to have those jobs, those high tech jobs, and tooling for the future. I think that's really important. We don't need to take it. We don't want a downfall. We shouldn't be getting everything outside the country, Chris. But we definitely should be looking at what are the areas that we want to invest in and produce in America, and we got to be able to produce good quality stuff, right? I think one of the things that if you go back to the 70s and 80s is that you would talk about are some of the quality that we were producing in the U.S. was not as good as what we're doing now.
Yeah, who was it? I just read this. There's a company that just stated that they wanted to invest $100 billion into the U.S. What business was that? I mean, it was just announced earlier this month. It's like $100 billion they wanted to invest in the U.S. There's a bank or something. Yeah, SoftBank. And there was it's a Taiwanese semiconductor manufacturing company. Okay, I knew there was okay. And that was announced on March 3rd that they want to move its semiconductor processes to operations in Arizona. So, oh love that question,
Hey,
Chris.
we love your other comment. I know people can see it in YouTube, but I don't think we're going to address it in the on the podcast, Chris. You're giving us both a laugh, and we're enjoying it. And everybody who's interested, if you just go to the YouTube channel, you'll be able to see the comment that Chris posted. So
That's awesome.
Yeah. So going back to the tariffs, right? And looking, I'm still going to get on my bandwagon on this. It's amazing. After 9/11, we gave up a lot of freedoms in this country, Jim.
Mm-hmm.
We gave up a lot of freedoms because we wanted to protect America. And I don't want to give up any freedoms. I'm all about freedoms. I'm all about my Second Amendment right to bear arms. I'm all about being able to walk down the street without being questioned. Am I suspicious? Right.
Mm-hmm.
So understand when I say that I'm for the rights and the freedoms we have in this country. But if drugs like fentanyl are becoming such a crisis, right, what can we do to stem that with technology? Going back to the question, right, the scan, right? I know there's a scan. There's lots of concerns. I know when they first deployed those scanners to the airports, people are up in arms. And today we just deal with them, right? Nobody refuses to go through one. And so what I'm saying is, I know they put them in cavities, but isn't there a way to see internally if there's stuff being carried, right? So it's just, again, I'm not the technology guy when it comes to this, but I definitely think there are things we can do to stem the drug flow across the border.
I was reading comments.
Yes, I believe, and Chris, we agree with you. He's shooting for the moon.
Yeah.
So that we get fair trade agreements. I concur.
Yeah, and we foot the bill. I mean, we can, but as we were talking about a little bit ago, we could possibly, especially the middle class, can be footing the bill for a lot of that. And hopefully it's just temporary, and hopefully it doesn't affect inflation. I mean, it's like we were talking about earlier. How long is he going to use this as a tactic until it plays out and move on to another tactic, or is he going to play this out throughout the entire administration? I can't imagine he's going to play it out for 4 years. I mean, he's got to move on to something else. So hopefully that's the situation.
I think it's got to be strategic, right? There may be times throughout his 4 years in the administration he may need to use certain tariffs against certain countries, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I agree, the sustainment of these tariffs are not good for the economy. Mm-hmm. They're not good for inflation, right? We went through the 5 facts, and those are true facts, right? And that the consumer, unless the importer reduces their price, the consumer is going to bear that cost. Mm-hmm. Those are facts. So Chris, it's a sore subject for us. That's why we're talking about it here today, right? I don't know how I feel about this, about the tariffs. I know that we just can't sit there and take it on the chin from other countries like we've been doing. But at the same token, let's make sure we're doing it for the right reasons. As I had said earlier, right? I'm about, hey, can we sit down and negotiate before we go and stop the tariffs? Yeah.
You can be heavy-handed to let them know this is how we want this to happen, but you can't go through an entire relationship heavy-handed. You've got to, at some point, you've got to say, okay, we made our point. Let's back it down. Now, what can we do? I'm serious. So what can we do now to keep the peace, to keep things equitable for everybody involved, keep these prices down, keep our people, from having to pay too much more out of pocket, and
Well, that heavy-handedness could be used to end the war in Russia and Ukraine, right? That's where I think we need a heavy hand. I think we need a heavy hand to get that last living American hostage out of Hamas's hands, right? That's where you use a heavy hand. That's just my perspective, right? Mm-hmm. I believe in diplomacy does work and that we can negotiate. I'm not saying that we need to negotiate with China, but definitely our partners to the north and south, Canada and Mexico, I think that's where negotiations are important before we apply tariffs.
Yeah, you don't want, you've heard all the, horror stories about you have that one neighbor that you're always battling with. We don't want that. And that's what it's been. That's what it's been. But, we got the same, as long as we're saying, hey, come on in, we got all this free stuff for you. You won't have to work for nothing. As soon as you walk in here, we'll put you up in a 5-star hotel in New York and give you everything you need, who wouldn't come?
I think those days are over.
I hope so.
I think those days are over.
I hope so, because I mean, if I were to, move to another country, which retirement's coming, I've been talking about it, I've been thinking about it. I'm not going to walk in there and just get handed a free ride.
No.
And they're going to expect me to learn the language. I don't think that's too much to ask. We just went to Argentina last year, and I made the mistake of not brushing up on my Spanish. And we had some problems the first few days, but that was on me. I should have taken the time to learn the language better. So the Dodge stimulus.
Yeah, that's an interesting, Chris.
Yes.
We our podcast 2 weeks ago, we talked all about Doge and what we thought about Doge 2 weeks ago. If you were to go on to YouTube and look at the Signal Brothers channel, we covered that for a whole hour about Doge.
Yeah.
And the one thing we did say about it, Chris, is there's a lot of touting about the savings, but the one thing we did say, Chris, was that we definitely want a website, a public website showing the savings, right? All Americans should be able to conclusively see the real dollar amounts that are saving. And nothing personal. Show me the money, right?
Yeah.
Don't just say it. You got to prove it to me.
Yeah. It's, it's just, you don't want to just take someone's word for it, because at that point, you're literally just taking someone's word for it. If you said, I saved you $100 billion over a year, over 5 years, over 100 years, or over 1 day, what is it? And I have no problem with facts. Facts are without passion or prejudice. Show me a fact. If I don't like it, it's nobody's fault. It's a fact. I just want to see it. You're absolutely right, Kevin.
So we got a question from Colin or more of a statement, about what incentives does Canada and Mexico have to negotiate with the U.S. When the U.S. would just turn around again in 5 years and demand to renegotiate again or threaten tariffs?
That's a good point.
Well, it's a great point, Colin. I concur, and that's why I think negotiating first before threatening tariffs is the way to go, right? Tariffs should be a last resort. And I think there are certain countries that we don't negotiate with, right? China is one of them, right? We don't negotiate with China, right? We slap those tariffs on and we move forward. But our partners, Canada and Mexico, I think negotiations are important. There we go. Show me the money from Jerry Maguire. That's it.
Yep. But yeah, I don't know. We're still in that gray zone. We're like, we like what's happening. We don't necessarily like how it's being done. Could we do better? But then again, it's still early, still real early.
Yep.
And we could just be waving the stick, waving the, hey.
This is probably a topic that we should probably come back and revisit in a few months, Jim.
Yeah.
And really, after the impacts have really happened and we can analyze them, it's probably a good time to come back and do a follow-up on the tariffs, right? Because then I think we'll have more clear information whether it's really having the impact that Trump desired them to have.
Yep. It's because again, I keep referring back to it because I really like it. Your scalpel versus sledgehammer analogy.
Yeah.
We're starting out with a sledgehammer. Once we make our point, we might be able to put it down and then go to the scalpel.
Yes.
That's what I'm hoping.
Yes, sir. So, I was thinking, because I think we've been going for about 45 minutes on the subject. I was thinking about maybe talk about the little interesting episode I had with the Stafford County Republican Committee yesterday. What do you think, Jim? Do you think I should bring it up live here?
Yeah, go ahead and do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, I was on the Stafford County Republican Committee the executive committee for this committee, and I became the communications guy. So I recently became a member of the committee, which is like all the members that are Stafford County Republicans. And I was complaining about communication, so I jumped in to become the communications chair. So, I have access to the Facebook, I have access to, all the social media. So anyhow, one of our school board members, Maureen Sigland, who was endorsed by the committee, by the way, had posted a post about the test scores for the schools. And she said, hey, here's conclusive proof that education in Stafford County is getting better. It's not getting worse, like a lot of people are saying. Well, she got a lot of negative feedback that, test scores are not the way to do it. And, you can't go by test scores to gauge the quality of education. And while I agree with some of that, I mean, you got to come up with a basis of something to compare it to something. You can't just use nebulous sayings. So I went and jumped on and I responded to her. And I meant to respond just as me, right? But I responded as the Stafford County Republican Committee. And I basically said, hey, Maureen, hey, you're doing great work. Keep up the great work. Don't worry about the people hating on you and complaining, right? This is the kind of thing we need to do. This is empirical proof. Oh my God. A whole bunch of people got upset. They got upset because I supported our endorsed candidate. And so yesterday, obviously, there was a lot of fallback. The chairman was getting a lot of flack. There was other members getting flack. So I immediately resigned. I knew they were just going to, remove me anyhow. So I resigned. But I just can't believe that people get so offended, right? So if you look at and if you go onto Facebook and if you go to Stafford County and you look at the chat, what you're going to see is a bunch of people saying, you can teach people to take tests, but it really is not a proper gauge. I got it. But don't complain about the statement if you don't have a solution to gauge it. That was the whole point of my post. That was the whole point of my post, is that you got to use something to gauge, and testing is a method. And if you don't like testing, great. Provide an alternative method to gauge that test, to gauge the quality. Yeah, so it's a little exciting yesterday.
Yeah. It's just it's indicative of our culture today, where we used to have thicker skin. We used to have thicker skin. I mean, we didn't, most people didn't get just offended by, someone walking down the street in a shirt that they didn't like. I mean, but that's the society we live in now, is people just, get offended by anything and everything. And it gives them the spotlight for 5 minutes, whether they're serious or not about, what the situation is. They just need to be heard, and they take advantage of that. And I don't know.
So what's funny is they were up in arms about my statement, but there is a knockdown drag out going on between between two boards of supervisors. One's Republican, one's independent. The independent one is endorsed, and they're going back and forth at each other on Facebook. And matter of fact, I reached out to the chairman early this week and said, hey, I think this is something we really got to do. We got to sit these guys down and talk to them, right? And get them to play nicely, because it doesn't bode well on the committee, since, one's Republican, one's endorsed by the Republican committee. But nobody seems to care about that. That's okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's all right. Let that drama play out on Facebook. And if you go out, you can look and you can see it on Dante Diggs did a 45-minute response to the Republican nominee. And I think he had a lot of valid points. I think he had a lot of valid points and did his research. So I was quite shocked, though, to see this kind of drama play out in Facebook and he didn't start it. So I'm not putting him down. I'm just saying, I think we need to be able to sit down and have a conversation and agree to disagree, right? And I don't see that happening. I agree Crystal Benucci is very manipulative, and I agreed she did a lot of crazy stuff. She does a lot of things crazy and very extreme, but that we still got to take the moral high ground, I think. So quite interesting. yesterday. Well, what I do have now is a little bit more time to focus on the podcast, Jim, which is good.
You got to see the plus side.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. But yeah, it's people just it's amazing what people do. And a lot of times you will never hear from those people ever unless they want to complain about something.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
100%.
It's like,
So.
hey, it's like I've had friends, Democrat friends that would show up and, say something about this or that. And I'd say, hey, you know what? I never hear from you unless you're showing up to argue with me. I never hear you say, well, those are great pictures of, dinner with your girls. Glad you were able to get together with them. That looks awesome. Or, congratulations on a new car that you got. Nothing like that. But boy, he said, you know what? You're absolutely right. And we don't have that problem anymore. He'll show up on both now. So,
Yeah.
And I got this one guy now. I've known him for years. He's in the entertainment industry, and used to see him all the time. We talk. I've been to his film premieres. I mean, and then all of a sudden, just in the last few weeks, he started showing up on all my posts, just saying some of the most offlandish stuff. I mean, I don't even know where he come up with some of this stuff at. And I'm like, what is he doing? And I talked to another film guy that I know, and he's like, yeah, he does it to me too. I don't know where it came from all of a sudden. I'm like, and some of the, wow. And he'll go completely off topic and just go to town. And I'm like, why? If you're going to chew me out of it, at least stay on topic.
Yes.
It's, and he's done that 2 or 3 times now in the last couple of weeks. And I'm just, what is this about? And it's a shame because I like his work. We've talked for years on stuff. I hate that. I hate that. I don't want to choose between friends and politics, but sometimes they just make it too difficult to not.
Yeah, we shouldn't have to choose. And that's the whole purpose of standing this up. This is the whole purpose we stood this up, right? Is to have conversation. That's why we want to invite people on the podcast who have a very different opinion than us and talk it out and learn something, Jim. That's what this is all about. This is why you and I are doing this.
Yeah. But when you got people that will go out and just go to the furthest link to link something together that they just want to argue about to what you're talking about and to throw it in as an insult, you can't discuss with those people.
Yeah.
You just can't.
I agree. I concur.
Yeah.
I think one of your friends jumped on a post I put on your Facebook page this week, and he was going back and forth. And I just, how I ended it, I thought I ended it gracefully. Just said, hey, man, happy to have the conversation with you. Just not going to do it over Facebook chat. Right.
I think I recall seeing that.
Yeah. So, yeah. Well, Jim, we're coming to the top of the hour.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we have exhausted the topic for this time. What do you think?
Yeah, I do like your idea coming back to it in a few months, though.
I think we definitely need to do it. So I'd be interested. We did get the chat, the comments in the chat from YouTube, and now that this is, by the way, for those of you who don't know, we did reach 100 followers on Facebook, so we're able to stream live on Facebook. So one of the things we didn't do was pull up Facebook to see if there was any comments in Facebook, and that's a shame on us for not doing it, but we'll take a look at it.
Yeah, if you look at your live viewers thing up there, it showed the brother from the YouTube, and it showed from the Facebook. We did have a Facebook viewer.
Oh, did we? Awesome. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, fantastic. Well, I think that's it, Jim. Well, I'm Kevin.
I'm Jim.
And we are
the Signal Brothers.
Have a good one, folks.
Thanks for watching.